NXT took an L with this show. Now, I've defended NXT a lot on this channel, given that it's one of the only wrestling shows out there that's given me enough incentive to watch every week. NXT is a show that rarely doesn't have a payoff to the content that they put out every week. Just about every segment on their weekly TV show matters, even though it's not always great or even good. I'm still a fan of the brand. But unfortunately, I can't go out of my way to defend this show too much. The best thing that I can say about it is that it was going just fine right up until the main event, and honestly more so the finish of that main event, in which killed NXT's In Your House 2021 show as a whole for me. NXT tends to suffer from being AEW's rival, turning a lot of immature wrestling fans against the brand because AEW took their title of being the WWE main roster alternative, and thousands of wrestling fans suddenly dismissed NXT altogether. I used to not be much of a fan of NXT right up until I'd say late 2018, when Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa finally started to catch on with me. From my point of view, NXT hasn't been able to top their NXT Takeover New York event from 2019 as their best show from top to bottom. And the pandemic certainly hasn't aided in that effort, and neither has Karrion Kross, who was someone that I was a fan of back in his Impact Wrestling days, where character-wise he flourished nicely. But even then, I could acknowledge that he was limited as a wrestler. As for the state of NXT right now, I'm dying for all of their current champions outside of MSK to get the flying fuck onto the main roster, so I don't have to put up with them anymore. Karrion Kross in NXT has been so incredibly boring to watch, and the same goes for the likes of Raquel Gonzalez and Bronson Reed, who's someone that's in dire need of a personality outside of his size. They all fit in so much better on Raw or SmackDown from my point of view, and I don't mind their characters getting beaten to shit on those shows, like I've seen with countless of other NXT call-ups that didn't deserve it. These are all character wrestlers trying to keep up the pace in NXT, a show that focuses on the wrestling. It's like, come on guys, their arc here in NXT is done already, can we get them the fuck out of the way please? I really don't need to see another main event where Cross is taking a nap while guys like Pete Dunne and Johnny Gargano are running circles around him, doing their best to make him out to be Doomsday when in reality he's nowhere near interesting enough on the wrestling show to be Doomsday. Put these fuckers on the show that likes to focus on the E in WWE instead, and maybe just like he did in Impact, Cross could be able to flourish and become a Baron Corbin-esque wrestler that's actually interesting to watch. Put Raquel on SmackDown and have her feud with Bianca Belair over the summer if Sasha's not available. I don't give a shit. Bronson is honestly probably going to wind up doing some kind of adventure survivalist zookeeper gimmick at one point because he's, Australian and fat. They probably think that's really funny. WWE already has Piper Niven on the main roster playing the fat girl Rebel Wilson-esque stereotype, and Bronson's not interesting enough to carry a 1-minute promo. Hell, maybe a zookeeper gimmick might just be good for him. I don't want to dwell too much on all of that though. I might as well get into the good stuff on the show because believe it or not, there were 2 matches worth highlighting despite the entire show falling off of a cliff at the end like it did. The opening 6-man tag team match with MSK and Bronson Reed defending their respective championships against Legado del Fantasma, wound up being a really good match, even though I still believe that Bronson is far better for a show like Raw, where they turn bland fucks like him into a zany weirdo, like whatever the hell Nikki Cross is doing right now. And Legado is far better fit for 205 Live because they're so painfully uninteresting on NXT. I have little to no interest in the North American title picture at the moment because Bronson's still running around with that thing, and Santos Escobar looks to be the next guy in line to take the belt off of him. It's kind of fucking hard for me to defend NXT when shit like this makes their takeover shows right now. Still, at least they had a good match together, and to be quite honest, I'm quicker to give all of my praise to MSK for making that match anything remotely interesting to watch because they have been absolutely killing it since they arrived on NXT. Seriously, MSK might just be the best act going in NXT right now. And I say that even with the likes of someone like Cameron Grimes in mind, who's getting a lot of love from wrestling fans and critics alike. His match with LA Knight on this show in a ladder match for the $1 Million Championship was the match of the night in my opinion, and was the one match on the entire show that made anybody come out looking better for having been in it. LA Knight winning the match was the best example of the consistency of NXT as a brand, where some way or another, they'll get their guys over. I wasn't exactly a fan of the feud prior to the match, but the match paid it off so fucking well that I had no other choice but to care about what they were building up to, and to what they're building up to currently, with Cameron Grimes obviously being next in line to take the belt from Knight. Every other match outside of those ones fell flat, or just flat out sucked. The NXT Women's Championship match between Raquel Gonzalez and Ember Moon was so painfully boring to watch. Has been a constantly bland wrestler to perform on the wrestling show of WWE, and feeding Ember Moon to her fell about as flat as every Raquel Gonzalez match that I've seen so far, and yeah, that's including the last women's standing match with her and Rhea. Xia Li versus Mercedes Martinez was awful, and that it was so damn uninteresting, short, and boring. At the moment, I don't care about Tian Sha enough to want to see her and her servants in a takeover match. And the main event was going great right up until the fucking horribly predictable finish. I mean, seriously, whoever thought that finish was creative in any way and was anything less than predictable as all fuck might just be a complete fucking moron, because all it did was put the nail in the coffin on a match that was already suffering from everyone involved having to get their shit in around Karrion Kross instead of with him. And on top of that, having the finish fall as flat as it did, and the CWC wasn't helping in the slightest. Takeover shows like this one makes you desperately miss when NXT would have their takeover shows in an arena, because it felt special and different for them to wrestle outside of the house for once. Personally, I can't wait until the Cross era in NXT is finally over and done with. For the time that it was on pause with Karrion having to vacate the title due to an injury, wound up being a breath of fresh air when Finn had his run at the top towards the end. Cross coming back to NXT only brought back a time where I just didn't want to watch NXT anymore on a weekly basis in mid-2020. And the sooner that a few other acts get the hell away from NXT, the better. Because NXT TakeOver In Your House 2021 was trash.